Hi everyone. So I welcome you to this tutorial. In this tutorial video, we will be covering the practical aspect of virtual warehouses inside of Snowflake, how we can create a virtual warehouse in Snowflake. So in the previous tutorial that I published on Snowflake on this channel, we covered all the aspects, all the theory aspects of a virtual warehouse inside of Snowflake. So if you have not watched that video, I'll highly recommend you to go and watch that video first because we have covered virtual warehouse from beginning in that video and we have done a very detailed discussion on that video about virtual warehouses. Okay, so let's just jump right into this tutorial where we will be learning how we can create virtual warehouses in Snowflake in multiple ways. So let's just get a gist of the points that we will be covering in this video. So we'll see how we can create virtual warehouse from the Snowflake interface itself. And post that, we will also see how we can create virtual warehouse using SQL commands inside of my Snowflake worksheet. And we will see what are the additional properties when we create a warehouse, like what are the object parameters, what are the object definitions that we can set whenever we are creating a virtual warehouse. Also, we'll have a look into how to create multi-cluster warehouse. And once we have created a warehouse, we will see that how we can alter the properties of a virtual warehouse. Like what are all the properties that we can alter once we have created a virtual warehouse and how we can alter the properties. Okay, so let's just quickly jump in. So to create a virtual warehouse from the Snowflake itself interface, first the basics, we'll have to log in into our Snowflake console. And in my previous videos, I have already shared a tutorial on how to log into Snowflake account, how to create a trial account and then log into your Snowflake account. Okay, so let me just go ahead and log into my Snowflake console. So I have to move to the browser first. Okay, I will open an incognito tab. And this is the URL that will help me to log into my Snowflake console. So this URL you get whenever you create your Snowflake account. So I'll just click on enter. So the page is loading, we can see, and here we will have to feed in our username and password. So a username and password is what you create whenever you are creating your Snowflake trial account. So we have done a whole detailed tutorial on how to create a Snowflake account. So you can go ahead and watch that if you have any queries. So I've typed in my username and password. I will just click on sign in. Okay, so I am signed in now in my tutorial. Now let's see how we can create a virtual warehouse inside of Snowflake. So if you move to the entire left of your browser window, you can see that we have a few details, like we have the worksheets, we have the dashboards, we have data, we have marketplace, we have activity, we have admin, and we have help and support. So we have a few different options. So what we will need to do, we'll have to go to the admin part. And once you click on admin, you get another few options like usage, warehouses, resource monitors, users and roles, security, and etc. So here you can see that we have a warehouses button. Just click on that. And once you click on that, you get this little screen on your browser window. So if you move to your entire right, topmost corner of your entire right, you can see that we have a button which says plus warehouse. So just click on this. Now there is a pop-up window opened in your screen. So here we will have to fill in the details that we need, like how do we need our warehouse, what is the name of my warehouse, do I want query acceleration service to be enabled, do I want this to be a multi-cluster warehouse, and also we have advanced warehouse options. So we can select the auto resume and auto suspend feature. We can give in the time period after which the auto suspend feature will be turned on, and also we can choose the warehouse type. So let's just fill all these one by one. So for the name, I will give it the demo warehouse. Size, I will just choose large, and comment, I will just leave it as this is a demo warehouse. So I do want it to be multi-cluster warehouse. So whenever you are creating a warehouse, you get the option to create multi-cluster warehouse. If you want the warehouse to be having the functionality of the multi-cluster features, so we can just click on this toggle button right here. So once we click on this, we have to fill in a few more commands, like what is the mode? Do I want it to auto scale, or do I want it to be maximized? So I'll just leave it to auto scale. Minimum clusters, I will leave it to 2, and maximum clusters, I will leave it to 4. So we can see that whenever we are choosing maximum clusters, we can choose from a range of 1 to 10. So I'll leave it to 4. And minimum clusters also we can choose from 1 to 10, but the value should always be less than the value of maximum clusters. Whenever we are creating a multi-cluster warehouse, the value of the minimum number of clusters should always be less than the maximum number of clusters value. Scaling policy, I will leave it to standard. And when I scroll down, we get other few options to choose from, like if I want this warehouse to auto resume, if I want to enable the feature of auto suspend in this warehouse. So I'll just leave both of them turned on, and suspend after how many minutes do I want this warehouse to suspend. So I'll give it a period of 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, if there is no activity on this virtual warehouse, I just want Snowflake to go ahead and suspend this warehouse so that there is no additional credit consumption. Okay, and now if I come on to the last option, so here we can select my warehouse type to be of standard or Snowpark optimized. So a standard warehouse is basically used for normal workloads that do not require a pretty high amount of memory consumption. And if you have some workloads or some queries that do require a high amount of memory consumption, so in that case, you can go for the Snowpark optimized warehouse type. Like if you are creating an AI model dataset, or if you are training an ML dataset. So in those scenarios, it is always recommended to go ahead with the Snowpark optimized warehouse type. And one more point to note here is that a Snowpark optimized warehouse type is only available for warehouses with the size medium and above. So if you're choosing a warehouse of size extra small or small, you do not get the option to have the warehouse type of Snowpark optimized. So since here I have chosen my warehouse size to be of large, I do get the option to select from the warehouse type, and I can go ahead and make this Snowpark optimized warehouse type. But I do not need that feature. I will be just needing normal amount of memory for running my queries. I do not have a requirement of a pretty high memory workload. So I'll just go ahead with standard. And once done, once you have filled in all the queries, you can just go ahead and click on this create warehouse button. So now in your screen, you are able to see that we have the demo workhouse present. I'll just go back. So here we can also see additional properties like status is started, size is large, type is standard, clusters. Since it is a multi-cluster warehouse, we have 2 minimum clusters and 4 maximum clusters. We can see the query acceleration service. It is disabled because we chose it to be disabled. The owner is account admin, and when it was created. So since it is created just now, it is showing just now. Okay, so we have seen how we can create a virtual warehouse from the Snowflake interface. We have also seen how we can enable the multi-cluster feature inside of the virtual warehouse. Now let's just go ahead and learn how we can create a virtual warehouse using SQL command. So just come back to the slides. So we have learned how we can create a virtual warehouse from the Snowflake interface. Now let's move on and learn how we can create a virtual warehouse using SQL inside of my Snowflake. So first let's get familiar with the SQL syntax to create a virtual warehouse. So it goes like this. create or replace, which is optional, warehouse, if not exists, which is again optional. Then we have to give in the warehouse name, and then we can specify the object properties and the object parameters, which are both optional. So we'll see in a minute what this object properties are and what are the object parameters that we can specify whenever we are creating a virtual warehouse using SQL. For now, let's just focus on the syntax. So the syntax goes something like this: create warehouse, and then we have to provide in the warehouse name. And additionally, if you want, you can also mention few properties, few object properties, and also you can mention few object parameters. So the syntax looks pretty easy, pretty doable. Now let's have a look on what these object properties are and what these object parameters are, and how we can create a virtual warehouse using these object properties and object parameters. So first, let's get our minds clear with these two terminologies, the object properties and the object parameters, and then we will hover to our Snowflake account and create a virtual warehouse using SQL command. So if I talk about object properties, we get a whole list of object properties. Like we can choose from the warehouse type, if I want my warehouse to be standard, or if I want my warehouse to be Snowpark optimized. I can choose from the warehouse size, and the attribute to do that is warehouse underscore size. And we get a whole list of warehouse sizes, the options to choose from. Similarly, we can also specify maximum cluster count, also the minimum cluster count. We can also specify the scaling policy, like if I want the warehouse to have the scaling policy either standard or economy. I can specify the auto suspend, and this takes in a number as a parameter. So auto suspend, we do have to give the value of a number like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. So like that, we can specify the value of the auto suspend attribute. Auto resume, if I want my warehouse to resume automatically and the values for this attribute are true or false. We get initially suspended, like whenever I will create the warehouse, will it be suspended or will it be running? So here I can specify the values to be true or false. And similarly, we can specify other properties too, like the resource monitor, the comment, the enable query acceleration service to be true or false, and what scale factor do I need for the query acceleration service. So these are a few object properties that we can specify whenever we are creating a virtual warehouse using SQL. Okay, so let's move on and have a look at the object parameters. So the object parameters, we have the attributes of maximum concurrency level. Also, we have the statement queued timeout in seconds, like after, if I have a running query and if it is taking a long while to execute, after how much time do I want it to be timed out? Okay, so these are the few object parameters that we can specify when we are creating a virtual warehouse using the SQL command. Let's have a deeper look onto the Now let's have a deeper look on the properties, on the parameters that we have just discussed. And let's try to keep it short, and then we will jump onto the Snowflake interface. So the required parameters in the syntax, we have the name. So name obviously is the required parameter when we are creating a virtual warehouse using SQL. We do have to give the name of the virtual warehouse, and it must be unique for your account. So if you have a warehouse with the name demo, then you cannot create another warehouse with the same name. Name must be unique for the account. And optional properties, if I talk about optional properties, we have warehouse type, which we can choose to be standard or Snowpark optimized. And by default, it takes in the standard. So unless and until I specify that I want this warehouse to be of the type Snowpark optimized, the warehouse gets the default value of standard warehouse type. And talking about warehouse size, we can choose from the whole list of our warehouse sizes, that is from extra small to extra 6 large. And by default, this attribute takes the value of extra small, maximum cluster count we can specify. These are all the optional properties. We do have to specify a number for the maximum cluster count, which can be a value ranging from 1 to 10. Similarly, if I have a multi-cluster warehouse, I also have to specify the minimum cluster count, and the values are in the range of 1 to 10. Auto suspend is equal to, I can specify after how much time I want my warehouse to get auto suspended. And here also this takes the value in a number. Auto resume, I can specify the whether true or false. So this property, it specifies whether to automatically resume a warehouse when a SQL statement is submitted to it. So I can set the values to be true or false. Okay, so we are done with the theory. Now let's jump onto the Snowflake interface and see how we can create a virtual warehouse using SQL syntax inside of my Snowflake account. So I'll just need to go into the worksheets, and I will have to create a new worksheet, or I can choose from the existing ones. So I'll go ahead and create a new worksheet. You can just move on to the rightmost topmost corner of your browser window and you will see a plus button. Mandatorily, you will have the worksheets selected. You will have this plus button. Just click on this plus button, and here you can choose from the worksheet types. So I'll be using SQL. I'll select the SQL worksheet, and this opens a new worksheet for me to work on. So in here I can write SQL queries and execute them. So let's just go ahead and create the warehouse. So I'll create a simple warehouse. Press the semicolon and let's run this command and let's see what happens. So this play button, this tiny little play button, is used to run the SQL command. So I've run, and in my results, the status, I can see that warehouse data analysis warehouse has been successfully created. Let's verify that first, whether my warehouse has been created or not. So for that, I need to click on this home button, which will take me to the home page of my Snowflake account. And from here, we already know that to see a list of warehouses, we have to first move into the admin tab. And from there, we'll have to select the warehouses tab. So it is not showing yet. Let me just click on the refresh button. So once I refresh this, we can see that we have our warehouse, data analysis warehouse, that we just now created using the SQL syntax. And we can see other properties like status, size, type, clusters, running, queued, query acceleration service enabled, owner, and when it was created. So this is how we can create a virtual warehouse using the SQL syntax inside of my Snowflake. So I hope the points were clear. I hope both the points were clear, like how we can create warehouse from the Snowflake interface and how we can create the warehouse from SQL commands inside of my Snowflake account. So let's jump back to our tutorial. So we have created virtual warehouse using SQL. Now let's see how we can alter the properties of a warehouse. So let's suppose I want to make this data analysis warehouse and I want to have the size of large. So right now the size is extra small and I want this warehouse to have the size large. And also right now this is a normal warehouse. I want to enable the multi-clustering feature for this warehouse. So how we can do that? So we can see that we are in the admin tab, and in the admin tab we are under warehouses, where we are getting the list of all the warehouses that I have for this account. So I'll just click on this warehouse that I want to edit. Once I click on this, it takes me to this window. So if you again move to the topmost right corner of your browser window, you will see these three dots. So once you click this, you can see that you get a list of options to do with your warehouse, like you can edit, you can suspend the warehouse, you can also drop the warehouse. If you do not need the warehouse, you can drop the warehouse, and this will also save you a few credits. And if you want, you can also transfer the ownership. Like for now, the owner is account admin, And if you want, if you can transfer the ownership to any different role, any different user. So we'll see that how we can do that in consequent lectures. For now, we'll see how we can edit the properties, edit a few object properties for this warehouse. So we'll just click on edit. So this box opens up right front of my screen. So here, what do I want to do? I want to have this warehouse the size of large, and I want to enable the multi-clustering feature. So first let's play with the size. So once I click on size, I get this drop down. So from here I can choose large. Okay, so we have altered the size. Now coming back to the multi-cluster warehouse, it is already enabled for the warehouse and the mode is selected to be maximized. Let me just click on the auto scale mode so that we can specify the maximum number of clusters and minimum number of clusters for the warehouse. So once I click on auto scale, the minimum number of clusters is set to 1. I'll keep that to 2. And the maximum number of clusters I want to be 5. So I'll click on 5. Scaling policy is set to standard. We are good to go. So we have altered the properties, we have changed the size, and we have enabled multi-clustering, set the values of minimum and maximum clusters. So this is how we can alter the properties of an already created virtual warehouse. So once done, we can click on save the warehouse. Let me just re-verify. I'll click on this back button, which will take me to the list of warehouses. So here we can see for the data analysis warehouse, the size is set to large and the clusters are set with a value of 2 and 5. 2 being the minimum clusters and 5 being the maximum clusters. So this is how we can alter the properties of an already created virtual warehouse. Okay, so let me jump back to the tutorial. I think we are done with this lecture. Yes. So let's quickly have a key takeaway, whatever the points we learned in this video. So we saw how we can create a virtual warehouse from the Snowflake interface. We saw how we can create virtual warehouse using SQL commands. We also saw, like whenever we are using SQL syntax, what are the object parameters and object properties we can specify when using SQL syntax to create a virtual warehouse. We had a check on the additional properties when creating a warehouse. We also saw how to create a multi-cluster warehouse and how to set the minimum number of clusters and maximum number of clusters for a multi-cluster warehouse. And for the last point, we also had a look on how to alter the properties of an already created warehouse. So I hope this lecture was helpful for you. So we learned how to create the virtual warehouse in Snowflake in both the options that are possible from the Snowflake interface and from the SQL commands. Okay, so that was it for this tutorial. And coming to the next tutorial, we will have a detailed look on the Snowflake user interface, like how we can create databases. And we'll also dive into the roles concept inside of Snowflake. We will have a look on the data objects, like what are databases, schemas, and consequently we'll also be having a look at the stages options in Snowflake. We'll have a look at what are file formats inside of Snowflake. So we will be uploading daily videos on Snowflake related to Snowflake concepts on this channel. So if you have not subscribed, I will highly recommend you to subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss any Snowflake tutorial that we are publishing on this channel. Okay, so that was it for this tutorial. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.